In the terrible country I'm forced to live in, the UK branch of Cartoon Network experimented only very briefly with programming blocks like Toonami and Adult Swim. The latter, in particular, was very short-lived over here. I only have very vague childhood memories of catching shows like Space Ghost Coast to Coast and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. But as I grew older and became increasingly interested in online culture and learned about the kinds of shows people were watching overseas, I found myself getting more and more annoyed by a show that I couldn't watch that American Adult Swim watchers were raving about. You can read the title of this video, presumably. It's Venture Bros. I'm talking about the Venture Bros.
Go Team Venture!
Making its proper TV debut back in 2004 and running for 7 seasons up until 2018, The Venture Brothers has the distinction of being one of Adult Swim's longest-running original series. And to hear fans of the show talk about it, it's perhaps regarded as one of, if not the, greatest shows that Adult Swim has ever produced. And I never got to watch it properly. Aside from watching the occasional clip of it on YouTube's homepage, the fact of the matter is that no TV channel over on this side of the world that I'm aware of ever thought to broadcast the show, and none of the mainstream streaming services ever thought to broadcast it either. I haven't the foggiest idea why. Again, it's clearly a very popular and successful show, but for whatever reason, nobody ever thought to broadcast it. I can't figure it out for the life of me. For whatever the reason may be, I've gotten tired of waiting, and so, using very legal and legitimate means, I am finally going to check this show out for myself and document, season by season, my reactions to it. Or, it might turn out that I actually hate this show and give up around season 3. I hope not. So, sit down, get comfy, and join me for my venture with the Venture Brothers, and if you happen to be a fan of this show, feel free to leave a comment down below about why you like this show and how you would recommend it to others.
Go Team Venture!
Getting into the series proper, The Venture Brothers is centered around the misadventures of the Venture Brothers. Try saying that 3 times fast. There's Hank, who looks suspiciously like Fred from Scooby-Doo, and Dean, who looks suspiciously like Peter Parker, both of them having a very strong Hardy Boys influence in their design and personalities. They're the sons of Dr. Rusty Venture, a neurological mess of a super genius who, in turn, is the son of Dr. Jonas Venture, who is, by all appearances, the most amazing giga-chad of a man to have ever lived. From my understanding of things, the Venture Brothers was meant to be a riff/parody of Johnny Quest. For any youthful skibbity toilet enthusiast in the audience, Johnny Quest was an old-timey Hanna-Barbera cartoon about the titular Johnny Quest, a kid who went on all kinds of globe-trotting adventures with his super scientist dad. I'm not entirely sure if the Venture Brothers was meant to be a continuation in the same way Harvey Birdman or Space Ghost were. But either way, you can certainly still see a whole lot of Johnny Quest's DNA in how the Venture Brothers is presented, particularly in the central concept of the show. That being, if you were a kid adventurer like Johnny, or indeed Rusty, you would likely grow up to be an absolute mess of a man because of all the trauma you had to go through as a kid.
There, put this on. Okay.
I think my foreskin might have just broken off.
And considering how many of the plots of these episodes are kicked off almost entirely by Rusty Venture being, Rusty Venture, yeah, that childhood, definitely had a bit of an impact on who he is as a man. I'll admit, I'm not personally a big fan of the asshole-ish, neglectful, rude, abusive cartoon dad character trope. It's the kind of thing that's been overdone for a long fucking time at this point, and it's only in relatively recent years that we've seen any sort of pushback to this trope. But I give Rusty a little bit of a pass because, for one thing, he's actually pretty damn funny in how pathetic he is.
Give her like $5.
Can you break this?
And much like with Stan Smith from American Dad, the show does go out of its way to explain why Rusty is the way that he is. It's not just random douchebaggery. Comparatively, Hank and Dean, I'm probably going to call them Sam and Dean at some point, I don't know why, I've never watched an episode of Supernatural in my life, are shown as being good-natured if dim-witted weenies. And one of the biggest surprises for me going into this series was realizing that the Venture Brothers in their own show don't really have a whole lot in the realm of screen time. In more than a few of the episodes across Season 1, they either had very little involvement with the plot or no involvement whatsoever.
Check out the fifth leg on that beast.
It's called a trunk.
It's called Eurospaz, and that ain't what I'm talking about.
Brock, be ready with your trank gun on my signal.
They're likable enough, and they're certainly inoffensive, but as the series goes on, I would certainly like to see both Hank and Dean get more to actually do in a given episode. Although, I will admit, there was certainly one pretty big, unexpected twist with regards to Hank and Dean towards the end of the season. Rounding out Team Venture, there's also Helper, the family's robot. I'd say more about him, but Helper doesn't really do a whole lot over this season.
No one knows what it's like.
And Brock Samson, a terrifying, indestructible demigod of a man who clearly has some anger issues on his side.
You get the boys. I'll take care of these guys.
Are you sure? There's an awful lot of them.
They hit me with a truck.
He's voiced by Joe Family Guy. And as a group, Team Venture end up going on all manner of globe-trotting adventures that almost always turn south for them in some way. I guess you could loosely define the Venture Brothers setting as being sci-fi, but that feels like a pretty gross simplification. It's more like a sci-fi kitchen sink with things like superheroes, pulp adventures, magic, and just about any other adventure trope you can think of. It's certainly one of the most distinct settings I've ever seen in any Adult Swim show, or most cartoons for that matter, and I really do appreciate the extra steps that the showrunners took when it came to world building. It certainly helps make the Venture Brothers feel even more distinct and memorable. Sure, the setting is silly, that's just to be expected with any setting that just so happens to have a character called Girl Hitler in it. But even with that silliness taken into account, the showrunners still clearly put a measure of thought into making sure the world felt logical relative to itself. Certainly, far more than the madcap antics you get from most other Adult Swim shows. But for all the praise I could give to the Venture Brothers setting, my main praise has to go to the character designs. It takes considerable artistic talent for just about every character design, even for those of minor or background characters, to knock it out of the park in the same way the Venture Brothers does. And as I went deeper and deeper into Season 1, I found myself getting increasingly excited whenever I'd start a new episode because it would give me a chance to see even more cool new character designs. Or a chance to see what new thing was going to get riffed on in this given episode. Seriously, in Season 1 alone we had parodies of things like the Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange, the $6 Million Man, Doctor Doom, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Disney Corporation. Honestly, there's a whole lot of creativity on display here for each individual episode.
I've been gypped.
But if I'm talking about the visuals of a show, I can't just exclusively talk about the good, I do also have to mention the bad, and when it comes to Season 1 at least, the animation here gets a little bit rough at times, to put it lightly. That's not exactly uncommon when it comes to animation. The first season of just about any cartoon has a tendency to look a little bit rougher around the edges than the seasons that come after. You prove there's an actual audience for your show, and so the studio executives give you a bigger budget for animation from there. The first season of The Venture Brothers doesn't look atrocious or anything like that. It's entirely watchable, but there are definitely sequences when you're watching that you'll feel the individual pennies of the animation budget scraping together. But, oh well, it is what it is for Season 1 of any show, so here's hoping the future seasons improve in that aspect. One of the other big surprises I had going into the Venture Brothers was the fact that the Monarch, who is meant to be the arch enemy of Rusty Venture, actually doesn't appear in a few of the episodes. The impression that I had gotten from some of the clips I'd seen online, as well as some of the discussions around the Venture Brothers, was that the Monarch would be in every episode, a bit like Dr. Doofenshmirtz. I definitely noticed the Monarch's absence whenever he wasn't in an episode because, frankly, the Monarch is an absolutely amazing character.
Hey, guess what? Nobody cares who would win in a crazy fantasy fistfight between Anne Frank and Lizzie Borden.
Downright hilarious, a combination of Skeletor and Cobra Commander, with a design that perfectly straddles being cool and goofy like so many other things in this show. Although I don't know if I can really regard the Monarch as being incompetent, he just has the misfortune of going up against a goddamn demigod like Brock Samson. I already have a little theory cooking up that it's going to be revealed that Rusty and the Monarch are related in some way. Between the two of them being fairly similar in terms of physical appearance, plus having the same voice and generally having the same pathetic vibe to each other, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching, but it definitely feels like there's something there. Best episode of the season? I'm gonna go ahead and say Ghost of the Sargasso. I just really love the fact that the whole of the episode is based around a David Bowie lyric.
And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much.
She knows!
As for the worst episode of the season, I'll say the very first one, Dia de los Dangerous. It's not awful or anything, but if you're ranking any group of episodes, there's always going to be one that comes up short compared to the others, and the very first episode of this show is just a little too rough around the edges. Still has a few funny moments in it, of course, it's just that the other episodes are more funny to me. And that's season 1 dealt with. Overall, a really solid start to any show, and you can already feel a massive wellspring of creativity behind the showrunners. I'm already beyond hyped to get started on season 2. I want to see more of this world, I want to see more of the weird characters who inhabit it, I want to see Dr. Venture get even more pathetic. And considering the showrunners managed to get 7 entire series out of this, I think it's safe to assume they managed to improve and hone their craft as they went along, so in theory, it's just going to get better from here. Thanks for watching. If you happen to be a fan of the Venture Brothers, why not leave a comment down below? Let me know your favorite characters or your favorite episodes. It'll give me something to look out for as I go deeper into this show. I feel like I really missed out not getting to watch this show when it was actually on the air, so I feel it would be nice to have a sense of community as I go deeper and deeper into this show. Well, that all said, onward to season 2.